I've always been fascinated by the games from Remedy. Whether it was the more straightforward drama of the Max Payne games, or the more experimental uniqueness of Control and the first Alan Wake game. So when Alan Wake 2 was announced in late 2021, my interest was captured. The most exciting aspect to me was that it would be the first time that Remedy was going full survival horror with a game. Remedy's previous titles had always kind of flirted with the idea of being spooky or unsettling, so the idea of them fully committing to the horror aspects this time was an exciting notion. And now, after a couple of years of waiting, the game is out, so let's take a look to see if the return of Alan Wake was as fascinating as I was hoping for. Alan Wake 2 picks up 13 years after the events of the first game. The story starts off by following the perspective of Saga Anderson, an FBI agent who is investigating a string of recent missing persons cases. Her investigation soon leads her to following the trail of a cult, and along the way she finds a page of a horror story written by Alan Wake that is describing the events of her investigation before they happen. Alan Wake himself goes on his own journey throughout the game as well. Alan's branch of the story details his attempts to escape from the Dark Place, the eldritch location that he wound up in at the end of the first game. So Alan must navigate the Dark Place while fighting off his ever-increasing insanity long enough to write a story that will lead him to freedom. I found the dual narrative angle to be pretty effective. It lays a solid enough foundation for the plot, which affords them the chances to be more experimental with the meta-narrative as well as the other more out-there themes of the game. It helps that Saga and Alan's stories are pretty complementary of each other. Saga's detective story is the more straightforward of the two, while Alan's journey is where the game chooses to get weird most often. The characters are all rather charming. Alan Wake himself bounces back and forth from being a rather sympathetic hero to stark raving mad throughout the story, and it is really compelling to witness. Saga is likable enough, but I feel like the game doesn't give her that much to work with story-wise. Thankfully, the side characters, such as her FBI partner Alex Casey and a bunch of the Bright Falls citizens, have a pretty solid dynamic with her. Other recurring characters, such as Mr. Door and the returning Old Gods of Asgard, all have a unique charm about them as well. So the story does a good job at juggling the two protagonists, but how does it handle juggling them in the gameplay? In the moment-to-moment gameplay, Alan and Saga play mostly the same, with just some differences in arsenal. The thing that's truly different about the two is the overall gameplay loop that you'll be going through with each character. Saga's segments tended to be a bit more straightforward. Go to a location and investigate for a little while, things get spooky, you make your way back through the level, but now you're fighting monsters. Outside of the typical survival horror gameplay, the two unique elements that Saga has are the caseboard and the profiling systems. As you explore with Saga and talk to people, the game will make note of any important details that get filed away as evidence. This evidence would be applied on a caseboard as answers to questions, eventually resulting in an image of a classic detective story string theory. Profiling would see Saga put herself in the shoes of a witness or other character that she had chatted with so that she could come up with some crucial piece of evidence with the power of intuition. I'm in a weird spot with how I feel about these elements. I think the profiling was largely kind of silly, because it seemed like Saga was always able to make a pretty far leap in logic to come up with the right answer all the time. And the caseboard is kind of cool in theory, but I found it better saved as something for me to do when I was starting a session to refresh myself on details I might have forgotten, rather than something that was ever guiding me to information that I didn't already know, or some kind of new earth-shattering revelation. They felt like they were there more to have you go through the motions of being a detective, rather than making you have to deduce anything like a detective really would. Alan's segments were more abstract and surreal. He spends his levels searching the Dark Place for inspiration on how to proceed with his story. Alan's gimmick for the gameplay is the plot board, which involves him taking keywords or phrases and applying them to specific settings he's in to change them. I really enjoyed this mechanic. I found myself changing a scene to every variation just to see what was changing around me. Alan's other gimmick was his lamp that would change specific environments by absorbing light sources. It was a solid way to add a bit of a puzzle-solving element to traversing the Dark Place. I think one of the key improvements Alan Wake 2 makes from the original is the level of focus that the gameplay has. The first game very often felt like it had one foot in the door of being an action game, while not really having mechanics that were conducive to quality enemy encounters, which would lead to the pacing grinding to a halt sometimes. This time around, the gameplay is much more complementary of the story, presentation, and pacing. Enemy encounters are fewer and farther between. The game will often just let you sit and gestate in the atmosphere of the environments. Encounters typically only consist of a few enemies that need to be shot at just enough times to make you sweat. This makes all of the instances where the encounters turn up the intensity feel that much more impactful. The only minor gripes I have with the gameplay would be the weird checkpointing, as well as the boss battles that ranged anywhere from tedious to shoulder shrug inducing. The biggest strength of Alan Wake 2 is its incredible sense of presentation. The game has a vision and will stop at nothing to see that vision realized. One of the most standout ways about how the game presents itself is its usage of live-action video. Remedy has experimented previously with usage of live-action footage, but it was usually relegated to diegetic television segments. Alan Wake 2 goes a step beyond, and we see full-on pivotal character exchanges being portrayed by these live-action segments. I think perhaps the most impressive thing about this is that I didn't feel any level of disconnect when the game recreates these sets in-engine. The actual in-engine aesthetic of the game is gorgeous as well. This ranges from the dense forested areas you investigate with Saga to the surreal nightmares that Alan has to navigate. The game makes masterful use of lighting to tell its story. In the more grounded segments with Saga, the passage of time throughout the day is used to really sell the building intensity. The game will have the sun gradually get lower and lower to directly reflect the threat of the cult and the dark presence that is starting to manifest more and more. And in Alan's sections, oppressive usages of red and green light will be used to really sell the atmosphere of the area he's navigating. The sound design, performances, and score all come together to complete the package. Horror games live and breathe on their sound, and this game does a stellar job at making it feel like there's always something just beyond your field of view. I remember one instance in the forest where I was being attacked by a wolf, and the sound of its panting and moving made it feel like it could be breathing down my neck as soon as I exited the safety of the light post. The performances are well done on both fronts. Matthew Porreta, Melanie Liburd, and James McCaffrey all do great jobs as the voices of Alan, Saga, and Alex Casey respectively. The live-action performances were also well done with Ilka Veely and David Harewood as Alan and Mr. Door. And lastly, the music in this game rules. Whether it's the score of the game itself or a wonderfully made rock tune from Poets of the Fall, the music did not miss. Major set pieces are elevated by standout song choices, notable and poignant melodies will supplement the atmosphere of the levels you're traversing, and each chapter has an interstitial screen with a song for you to listen to while you process the recent happenings. It all comes together to make Alan Wake 2 a great experience sonically as well as visually. I feel pretty confident in saying that I have never played a game quite like Alan Wake 2. It is a must-play if you are someone like me and enjoy when games are not afraid to be weird and out there. I can see how it could be divisive for some people. Horror diehards might think it's too easy. Fans of other cinematic, narrative-heavy games might think it's too weird. But as far as I'm concerned, the quality and commitment to its vision is what makes this game a worthwhile experience. The survival horror gameplay acts as the perfect vehicle for the game to deliver its world and story to you. Everything from the game's interesting characters and intriguing mystery plot, to the themes and meta-narrative, to its atmosphere and excellent presentation, all gel together to make Alan Wake 2 a fantastic and truly unique experience.